Allergies are not something that we have to put up with. They are a response to our body being overloaded by inflammatory inputs that are unrelated to the thing that we think is causing our allergies. In this video, I'll talk about my own experience with seasonal allergies and how I put a plan in place to stave off allergy symptoms, even while living in a city that has the highest concentration of the allergens that my body responds to, oak and birch pollen. And you will walk away with some concrete steps that you can take to reduce or even eliminate your allergic symptoms so that you don't have to dread the next time allergy season rolls around and you can actually go outside and enjoy nature. I'm Karina and welcome to my channel where we discuss practical ways to elevate our wellness from a mind, body, soul perspective. The moment that I started eating a minimally processed diet, my allergic symptoms immediately improved. I used to get really bad allergies during the springtime as a reaction to tree pollen, but when I started to incorporate more whole foods into my diet and cut out all the processed stuff, my allergy symptoms immediately improved. But unfortunately, the happy ending was not at this point. I decided to move back to Washington, D.C., and this city has some of the highest concentrations of oak and birch pollen in the country. And during a certain 5-day window every spring, my allergies would get really bad again. And so I decided from this experience that I needed to refine my approach in terms of how I treated my body during this time. Specifically, I needed to reduce or eliminate the other inflammatory inputs that were coming into my body, the other things, both environmentally and what I was eating, that were causing my body to lodge an attack on what it thought were foreign agents. So before we get into the specifics of this approach that I use, let's talk about what inflammation and allergies actually are to get a better understanding. An allergic response that causes inflammation is when the body misidentifies something, such as pollen, as a threat. And it then launches an attack that's also called an immune response on that perceived threat. That starts to trigger the release of antibodies, which then triggers the release of compounds like histamine. And that creates the symptoms that we often associate with inflammation, like a scratchy throat or a runny nose, all the things that we associate with allergies. Now, there's a difference between acute inflammation and chronic inflammation. So acute inflammation is exactly what we just described. There is a perceived threat. The body launches an attack on that threat, and then it's able to calm back down. But then there's chronic inflammation, where the body actually isn't able to calm back down because it's overloaded with inflammatory inputs. So it feels like it's in this constant state of hypervigilance. So, for example, inflammatory compounds could be things like industrially processed seed oils in our food or a diet high in refined carbs and sugar, which can cause chronically elevated blood sugar. It can cause what we call glycated red blood cells, which are red blood cells that are gunked up with sugar. Emotional stress can also come into play, and all of these factors can cause inflammation and make the body think that it's constantly under attack. And when we have underlying sources of chronic inflammation, and then we also have acute inflammation coming from an allergy season, that's when things can get really challenging. So when the body is under a state of chronic inflammation and it's so used to launching this attack, to being hypervigilant, then it's really easy for it to also mistake these seemingly benign things like pollen and other things from nature and think that they're also threats. And so what we're trying to do essentially when we want to ease our allergy symptoms is we want to ease the stress, the inflammatory stress that is on our body so that our body can calm back down and realize that it's safe. Essentially, that's what we're doing with all of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing that we can do to eliminate the really common causes of chronic inflammation is to eat a minimally processed diet, free of refined carbs and sugar. And that's going to help with allergy symptoms a lot. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, once I started pursuing a whole foods diet, a lot of my allergy symptoms disappeared. But then they came back again when I was exposed to a more severe allergy-prone environment. And so this video will be talking about all those other things that we can do to refine and help calm our body down, even when we're eating a whole foods diet and we're getting rid of a lot of those common triggers of chronic inflammation. What else can we do to make sure that our body is truly in a state of ease? So here are the 5 steps that I'm definitely going to be including in my plan to optimize my well-being during those few days next year when the tree pollen count is high, so that I can still feel great in my body and still go about living my best life. Number 1 is to be mindful of my methionine to glycine ratio. Methionine and glycine are essential amino acids, and all essential amino acids need to be in balance with each other for the body to function optimally. So a lot of times when people are eating exclusively muscle meat and not other animal foods like skin and fat, then they can be prone to methionine levels getting a lot higher than glycine levels. And we want to make sure that we're including skin, fat, bone broth, all of these things into our diet as adequate sources of glycine. So those sources can include making sure that we're getting the skin on our salmon and eating that, making sure that our steak has some of those chewy bits, those collagenous skin and fat bits in it, and also consuming bone broth, whether you're making that at home or you're getting it from the store. Make sure that it's a jello-like consistency when it's cooled. That means that it's a good source of glycine. Glycine in particular also has some really great antioxidant benefits. It helps our body to endogenously produce antioxidants like superoxide dismutase and glutathione. And what those do is they help to neutralize any inflammatory compounds in our body, anything that's creating oxidation. So for me personally, I usually in my regular diet do have a good ratio of methionine to glycine, but I'm going to be extra careful of that ratio during those few days in allergy season. There are some times during my daily life where I'm just too busy to make bone broth, things like that, but I'm going to make sure that I've got my bone broth supply ready and that I'm consuming that adequately during that period where my body is more susceptible to inflammation. And bone broth in particular also serves a dual purpose because it has glutamine in it, which strengthens the gut lining. And so a lot of times what can happen if we're consuming things that are inflammatory for our body, or if we're exposed to those in our environment, is that the intestinal lining can get compromised. And so glutamine helps to build back up the gut lining. So now that we have our endogenous antioxidant system up and running and functioning effectively because we've upped our intake of glycine, now it's time to make sure that we also are consuming things that have the cofactors that work with our antioxidant system to make sure that it's functioning optimally. So things like vitamin A, C, and E, as well as critical minerals like iron, zinc, selenium, magnesium, manganese, all of these work with our antioxidant system. So good sources of vitamin A and a lot of these minerals that we talked about would be things like organ meats, especially beef liver is really high in vitamin A. Egg yolks and oysters have a lot of these minerals that we talked about. I'm usually getting a lot of these regularly through my diet, but what I noticed that I was missing when allergy season hit when I moved back to DC was vitamin C and vitamin E. So I get a solid amount of vitamin E from eggs and then a little bit of vitamin C from the meat that I'm consuming. But during allergy season, I'm definitely going to be upping my intake of those things. I'm going to be increasing my intake of vitamin C by consuming things like oranges, acerola cherry extract, or my favorite, which is amla powder. I used to throw that in my smoothies all the time, and then I just randomly stopped. But I'm definitely going to be bringing that back in, especially during allergy season. And then also vitamin E. I'm getting a good amount of vitamin E from eggs, but I also want to be upping my intake of that maybe by eating mangoes, pretty sugary fruit. So I'm going to make sure that's in moderation, but I'm going to probably throw that into my diet a little bit more as well. And so you can do the same for yourself. Take an inventory, notice where your gaps are, and see where you can up your intake of certain vitamins and minerals. Number 3 is that I'm going to make sure that I'm getting adequate levels of B vitamins in my diet. B vitamins help to facilitate the chemical process of methylation. Methylation is this term that's often bandied about in health circles. What it really means is that it's changing the way that your genes are expressed, what we call epigenetics, the expression of our genes, whether our genes decide to express one behavior or another. And so when we're getting adequate B vitamins and we're supporting the process of methylation, then even those genes that regulate inflammation, however they're expressed now, they could actually change. We're actually getting at the root of the way that our body functions. And so when we're supporting methylation, our body might actually not launch an inflammatory response at those allergens that it used to. it may not see them as a threat anymore because the way their genes express themselves has changed. And so this is really crucial. I am usually getting a good amount of B vitamins through my diet, through organ meats specifically. That might not be the most palatable way for you personally to get your B vitamins. I will say that Force of Nature and other companies will have ground beef, ground meat, where they lump in some organ meat so you don't actually taste it as much. There's also supplements that you can get. These are all great sources. But there is a time and a place for supplementation as well. I have a video on how you can optimize your nutrient intake through food, and this is definitely my preference on a regular basis. I'll include the link to that video in the description box below. But what I do say, even in that video, and what I'm saying now, is that there are some times when you might need to supplement. And for me, allergy season would be one of those times. So, in addition to consuming my organ meats, I might also supplement with a little bit of methylated B vitamins during that time. Make sure when you're supplementing that you are getting the methylated form of these B vitamins, because that's a lot more bioavailable and your body can actually use it. Sometimes the non-methylated forms your body just is not able to use. And number 4 is that I'm definitely going to be steering clear immediately before, during, and after allergy season of those foods that already trigger an inflammatory response in my body so that I'm not overloading it. So some of these foods are things that really everybody should be avoiding, and some of these are things that are just unique to my body, or my body finds these foods inflammatory, yours may not. And so the one thing that everyone really should be avoiding, not saying that it's the worst thing in the world if you have it once in a while, but generally try to avoid these things, are what we talked about earlier at the beginning of the video, industrially processed seed oils. There are 5 big ones. There's sunflower, safflower, corn, soybean, and canola oil. And the problem with these is not just about what they're made from, it's also about how they are processed. They're processed with high heat, which makes these fats really unstable when they enter the body. And so the body thinks that it can use these as sources of fuel, but it actually can't, which is going to cause apoptosis, cell death, inflammation running rampant throughout the body. And then some foods that are just unique to my body finds them inflammatory, are cow's milk and gluten. So with the dairy component, even with raw dairy, with cow's milk, because of its high lactose content, my body just can't seem to do very well with high levels of lactose. So I usually will ferment my dairy into a yogurt or a kefir, and then it's fine for me. And I can have raw cow's milk on occasion when it's not fermented on a regular day, but I'm definitely going to be avoiding that during allergy season. Same thing with gluten. I can have gluten on an average day on occasion and be okay. But during allergy season, I'm just not going to test my body's boundaries in that way. So you want to figure out what those foods are for you. Dairy and gluten are pretty common ones for a lot of people. Coffee is another one that's pretty common, especially if it has mold in it. There's some mold-free coffees, but a lot of them are not. Same thing with peanut butter, also prone to having mold in them. So you want to take inventory, notice, right? If you're being honest with yourself, if you've lived long enough in this body of yours, you know those foods that are causing you digestive distress, or they're keeping you up at night, but you still eat them because you kind of like them. But during allergy season, maybe it's a good idea to consider cutting those out. Number 5, the last step in the plan, is one that might seem obvious and straightforward, especially compared with the other steps in the plan that we talked about, but it's something that really falls by the wayside a lot of the time, and that's sleep. Sleep is one of those things where we'll get caught up in doing all the other things, all the more seemingly complex things. We'll be like, I'm doing everything right. What am I missing? And it might be sleep, and not just the time in bed, those 7 to 8 hours in bed, but also the quality of your sleep, right? Are you creating an environment where you're able to sleep deeply enough that you're getting both REM and non-REM sleep and enough cycles throughout the night? So making sure that you're using blackout curtains, or if you're not using those, using a sleep mask. You may want to use earplugs if there's a lot of sounds around you. For me, for example, I live right off a main road, so oftentimes during the night, ambulance trucks will go by. And it's one of those things that I used to tell myself, oh, I'm used to those, I can sleep through them. But really, sirens are meant to trigger a nervous system response in you. And so it's good to try to dampen those out when you can. And then make sure that the room is adequately cool. You're not getting too hot and waking up in the middle of the night. So all of those things are going to help make sure that sleep, which is your body's fundamental repair mechanism, is something that your body can use to build back up stronger, especially when it's under any kind of stress like it is during allergy season. So ultimately, our goal is to help our body to feel as safe and as resourced as possible so that it doesn't raise these false alarms and launch an attack on things that really should be harmless. Now, this is a gradual process. You might not reduce or eliminate your allergy symptoms overnight or even in one allergy season. But as you continue to follow these 5 steps in the plan that we talked about, number 1, optimizing the methionine to glycine ratio to support your antioxidant system. Number 2, getting in those vitamins and minerals that are cofactors to your antioxidant system. Number 3, getting in adequate B vitamins to support methylation and help modulate the expression of the genes that regulate inflammation. Number 4, cutting out or reducing those foods that cause an inflammatory response for you. And number 5, optimizing sleep. When you incorporate these 5 steps into your health and wellness practices, you'll start to feel like your best self even during allergy season. If you found this video valuable, please give it a like and share it. If you want to learn about more ways to feel amazing in your mind and your body, you can subscribe to this channel. We have both deep dives into physical health topics like this one. We also have videos on the mind-body connection on things like releasing trauma, regulating your nervous system. And I also have a masterclass that is a comprehensive plan to helping you achieve superhuman level health. And I'll leave a link to that masterclass in the description box below. Lots of love and talk to you soon.